Absolutely. For first of all, friend, it's good to hear that you have your job. So congratulations on that. Well, good morning, Riverbats, and welcome to the week of the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. My name is Ann Derrick, and today is a special day, not only because you're here. Today is also my work anniversary, so I am so excited to be here and to be a part of this process with you guys. So thank you guys for being here. We do have a couple of house cleaning or housekeeping situations here that we want to cover. We will have questions and answers at the end, so open discussion, as Marika said. So make sure at the end, like if you do have any questions, jot those down. You can also put those in chat. We'll have Satrice as someone monitoring those as well, so you won't lose your spot. But just making sure that you are ready to open up and talk about this whole process. So, a little bit more background about myself is I am the career services specialist for the North region. So, I cover the Cypress campus, which is where I am today, Northridge, San Gabriel, as well as the Round Rock campus. In addition to that, I also am adjunct and I teach at the Highland campus. So, I try to get to as many campuses as possible, as you guys can tell. So I started with ACC well over 20 years ago, and then I had a 20-year gap and I came back, and I've been back now for 3 years. So I'm excited to be here and to talk a little bit more about what preparing for the job, the interview process as well. But before I do that, Jackie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jaquel Diggs. I also go by Jackie, and I'm an advocate for student accessibility services. And I've been with ACC for a little over 10 years as well. My anniversary already passed too. So yay, it was this year for 10. Yay. Um, but we help students who have disabilities get accommodations for their classes or any accessible materials that they may need. So I am excited to have a conversation with y'all today.
Perfect. So let's get started. Let's get the game going. So today we are talking about preparing for the interview. So this is your interview preparation workshop. And so today, what we're expecting or what we're excited about doing is just getting you ready for that. As Marika mentioned, you've already gone through the getting your resume together. If you're thinking about the entire process when it comes to preparing for the job search, before you even put your resume together, you have to think about what you want to apply to, right? What type of career you're leaning towards, what type of position you're going for, and understand the main thing, guys, is the career is the journey, right? You have your job is in the moment. It actually feeds into the career path most often, even through your transferable skills or whatever it is that you bring to the table. But now that you've applied for the position, you've customized your resume before you did the application process, and now they've reviewed your information and they're inviting you in for this very special moment where you can actually interview for the position. So, what the learning outcomes for today is we're going to talk about what it is to go through an interview process. What is an actual interview and how effective, provide some effective interview tips and preparation techniques for you to prepare for that process as well. And one of the things I love to talk about a little bit more because it actually starts before the interview process is making sure you understand how to articulate your professional story. Stories are very important with the interview process because it gives that opportunity for the employer, the potential employer, to understand who you are, what you bring to the table, or potentially bring to the table. And then those stories actually leave that lasting impression on them. So you want to make sure we're structuring that in a light that is going to be everlasting, memorable, and positive outcomes. And then we also want to share some of the resources we have available that can help you prepare for that interview. One is called a resource is called Big Interview. And Big Interview is basically an AI tool, but we also will talk a little bit about how to utilize some AI in your process of trying to prepare for the interview so that you'll be more prepared. So the question is, what is an interview? A lot of people like to think an interview is when the company is asking you the questions, they're kind of grilling you. They're trying to, sometimes it may feel like you might be being intimidated, but that's not the goal of the interview. It's an actual discussion between the potential employer and an applicant or the candidate. And in this case, it usually starts with the employer, the potential employer, asking you questions. But guess what? You also have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of that process as well. So we want to make sure that you have your questions prepared and be prepared to answer those questions that the interviewer is going to be asking you. So, how do you prepare for any type of interview? You did it from the beginning, right? Before you apply for the position, you review that job description. And the one tip I like to add in this case is when you find the job posting that you're interested in applying to, make sure you do save a copy of that so you can always go back and review it. Oftentimes, when the job posting has been, if they've gotten the maximum amount of applicants that they're wanting to have in this moment, they may remove the job posting. So it is very important that you do download a copy of that job description because sometimes it could take a little time before you actually get invited to the interview. And if there are several days, sometimes weeks that may have passed, and in some cases, even months, you want to be able to reflect on that job posting and make sure that you are prepared to answer the questions that the company may be asking. You want to be able to do your research on the company. You want to research the company, their mission statements, any type of value system or vision systems, methods they may have out there that you want to be prepared for just in case. If you're able to research who works for those companies, like through a LinkedIn process, you want to be able to do that as well. And you also want to understand in reflection what value system you bring to that interview to present to the company, to the person that's interviewing you, to let them know with confidence that you are the person who have the set of skills that they're looking for, your strengths and accomplishments. And before you even do the interview, I know we used to say practice makes perfect, but in this case, we're always chasing perfect, right? Perfection. We just want to practice until it feels comfortable and feels normal. It feels like we own it and not just reading and regurgitating something that we may have written about ourselves. Be confident in who you are. Be ready to do that research, to review that posting again. Think about your resume, what was on your resume at the time when you applied for that position, and then practice some potential questions that they may ask you so that you'll be ready for the showtime moment, right? The moment that you are invited in for that interview. So it's all about telling your story, right? Your resume tells your story. It's the first opportunity for that company, that hiring manager to kind of get a little bit of a glimpse about what you bring to the table. The story that you're telling is your career journey, is your career story. Again, by telling stories, it leaves that lasting impression, and we want that to be a positive one for that potential employer because we want them to remember you, what qualities that you bring to the table. And as you're delivering that story during the interview process, you're doing it with confidence. It's authentic. It's naturally your story, and you are definitely doing it, or with the goal of doing it with intentionality, and with purpose. So here on the screen, again, you want to share the things that the value system that you bring. I call it the UVAs, and that's unique value adds. And the ads can include your skills, your strengths, and your accomplishments. And being able to share some examples of those things that you've done along the path that's bringing you to the point to you making sure that that employer understands that you do fit well into the environment and the culture of their organization. So it's how you deliver your story. It's what we want to do. You want to connect your experiences to the role of that or within that organization and make them feel the need to hire you and bring you in. You're enthusiastic, and you have to be enthusiastic about the process. You want them to know that you genuinely care about this and you want to be a part of it. Jackie, you have anything to add here?
Yes, also when you're telling your story, be sure to be direct about what you're saying. So use examples that you've done in the past, not things that you can do necessarily, but things that you have done. Because then that'll show the people who are interviewing you that you've done it already. And then you can also throw in the, well, I can also, because you're good at learning, right? You should just show that in all of your questions and your answers that you give.
Absolutely. We'll have some example questions later on that Jackie is leading us to that we can share with you guys. So we'll bring that back up again later and kind of give you some examples of those questions that you may have asked of you, as well as questions you can prepare to ask them as well. Marika, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll chime in really quick and just acknowledge that I know that AI feels really can feel scary right now in just our world and the job search especially. Wondering in what ways that's going to, affect jobs and our different various fields. But I want to also reframe that for us and empower you students to know that AI can be a tool for you to leverage as well and to support you through each of the stages of this process. So everything on this slide here that Anne is talking about, you can also leverage AI and say, and when it comes to saving that job description, you can paste the job description, you can paste your resume, and you can say, give me some really concise 1 minute examples of um you know tell me about yourself responses that I can give in an interview, or tell me several interview questions that I might expect for an interview for this position and give me some examples of good answers of those, right? And so like you can also be using these AI tools in every single one of these stages, and Anne will talk more about that with the big interview tool. But whether it's Chat GPT or something else, if any of this feels daunting, know that that is a phenomenal tool, that's also available to you to use in each of these steps.
We're so excited about this. These are all really good questions and good comments that we're making because guess what? We're going to share that with you in just a moment. Before we get there, let's talk about the different types of interviews that you could potentially go through. It used to be mainly two different types: phone screening, which would prepare you for potentially to come in for a more in-depth interview. And it used to be the in-person. Now we have virtual interviews. In addition to that, we have video recording interviews. So for the phone screen, we'll start at the top here. Phone screens, be prepared just in case, because again, this is the preliminary call that you'll get from HR to ask you a couple of questions to see if you can advance to the next round for a more in-depth in-person or virtual interview. Sometimes those are scheduled, sometimes they're not. And what I would encourage you to do is think about, just you know that you've applied for this position or several positions and that you may be anticipating a phone screen may be coming through at some point in time. So I'll give you some more tips on the next screen about that, but just keep that in mind that phone screens are one of a common interview practice as well. You'll also have those virtual interviews where, like the environment we're in right now, this is a virtual environment, right? The goal is to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a way that you're sitting in the center of your screen. You're answering those interview questions as well. It's not as personable as an in-person interview because you can't reach out and touch the person, but you can still convey your story. You can still answer those questions in a way that is still engaging, getting your point of view and your message across. So you want to make sure that you're practicing for that as well. And then the in-person interview could be with one person, it could be with several people, it can be multiple people within an organization. within that hiring organization that could be interviewing you as well. The virtual environment can also have a panel in addition to the in-person as well. So be prepared for that as well. And then last but not least, the video recording interviews. This one has just come onto the scene a little bit more recently, especially since COVID. Because nowadays you can, some companies will send out questions, the screening questions ahead of time. And what they want you to do is record your response to that question and return it back to them. So in nowadays, again, it used to be more common with two. You may be exposed to all four. You could get a phone screen leading up to a virtual interview or an in-person interview. Or you can also do a phone interview that is actual an interview with someone in addition to it before the or after the screen as well. And then the video recording as well. So we'll go more in depth about each one of these. So let's just jump into it. Here are some tips for the phone screen. So think about the scenario. There's a phone interview that you may or may not be anticipating. And in this case, you want to avoid distractions as much as you can. Now, if you're not anticipating that call to come through, maybe you're in the middle of a class or changing classes in between classes or something. It's pretty busy and it's pretty loud, and you get the phone call. The goal is to answer the call. I know in nowadays and now times that we're living in, a lot of times we don't recognize the caller that may be contacting us, and we may not answer the call. Here's what I encourage you guys to do is to go ahead and answer the call. Now, if I'm in the process of have been applying for different positions and I don't recognize the number, when I answer the call, typically I'll answer with something like, "Good morning, this is Ann. How can I help you?" Now, that sounds like a work environment, right? But it sounds pleasant and it sounds professional, right? You are still answering the call in a pleasant voice or pleasant tone. Now, if that just happens to be one of those robocalls and if they don't respond, then that's your opportunity to hang up. And just a little tip, for the most part, a lot of the robocalls or those scam callers that I get, when I say good morning or good afternoon, this is Ann, they're waiting for me to say hello. And if I don't say hello, guess what? They usually hang up. But if it is the employer that's calling you, then they will jump in and say, "Hi, this is Ann Derrick. I was looking to speak with Jackie." And because Jackie, chances are, have answered the call as, "Good morning, this is Jackie." It was like, "Oh, hello, Jackie. This is Ann Derrick with XYZ Company. I was calling to see, do you have a quick minute?" And from there, if you are in the middle of something, feel free to say, "Give me a second. Let me step away and find a spot where I can be, that's a little quieter or less distracting." So take that moment. They are usually, willing to do that. Try to find a spot where you can, it's a little bit more quiet, away from the hustle and the bustle, and be able to at least be prepared to answer those questions. How can you do this? Is because you've been anticipating, you've been applying for positions. So you want to make sure that you're ready just in case if that call comes through. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of examples too, and this is going to be in line with the second one. So let's say that I get a call in and I answer the call and they ask me a question and I start answering the questions like, "Well, no, right now I'm in the middle of class and I can't talk." Or I get the call and I'm like, "Good afternoon, this is Ann." And they say, "Oh, this is Jackie calling from XYZ Company. Wanted to see if you have a couple of minutes to talk." "Sure, yes, I do. Give me a second. I need to find a spot that's a little bit more quiet." And I don't know if you can see my face, but the difference was this smile, right? I'm speaking with a smile on my face and I sound more energetic, right? I sound a little bit more confident, a little bit more positive, and more anticipating that this call may come through. That's what we consider as a phone etiquette, right? It's how you answer the phone. It's your upbeat, it's your tone of voice. It's making sure that you're prepared just in case you don't always know what they're going to ask, but your preparation has led you to this moment, right? You don't want to chew gum. We don't want to eat. We don't want to have water in front of us or a soft drink or any of that. Not during this moment, right? Now, if you're in the process of moving from point A to point B to find a spot that's a little bit more secluded, then if you have a sip of tea to clear your voice and just to, be prepared, then do that in that transition where you're transitioning from one place to the next. When you get on the phone, guess what? You want to slow it down, continue to speak with that positive voice, right? And you want to speak slowly and enunciate your words. I get excited sometimes about things that I'm so passionate about that I can speak pretty fast, but I hear myself and I try to slow it down in that moment. This is also the time to use your active listening ears. You want to make sure that you're repeating the question just in case if, for clarity, for understanding. And repeating the question actually give you the power, the empower you with the gift of what we call the pause, right? It's helping you to kind of gather your thoughts and be prepared to answer those questions. While you're on the phone screen, guess what? They can't see you. You can jot down notes. You may have a cheat sheet available with you to jot down some of the things that you might remember about that position and be able to speak to those. Jackie, I'm sure you want to jump in right now.
Yes. So just to reiterate what Anne said, avoid distractions. When you're talking, you sound more inviting when you do smile. Whether or not someone can see you, that doesn't matter because they can hear it. So it's all about the intention on all of the five senses, right? So it's hard to see somebody if you're on the phone. But also using your active listening skills, you always have the right to ask, can you repeat that question or ask for clarification? That can also allow you to slow down, regroup, and also think about how you want to answer that question. So you always have the right to ask, can you repeat that? Or one more time, please. Any of those are very acceptable.
They're acceptable and they're appreciated by the hiring manager. They rather you get it right than for you to guess. So yes, very important. Thank you so much, Jackie. All right. So let's combine these two together, as I mentioned before. Sorry, I went too far. The video recording interviews as well as the virtual interviews, you kind of look at those as the same, right? You want to be, if you're looking at me on the screen right here, I try to make sure that I'm framed. I'm testing my camera, I'm testing my sound before we go into the interview process or before I start recording, because I want to make sure I'm in the center of my screen. I'm looking directly into the camera as much as I possibly can, or looking towards the camera that makes it looks like I'm answering the questions looking at the person on the other side of that camera, right? So I want to make sure I'm testing that I'm facing the camera, the screen as much as I can, and making that positive eye contact. Now, this is where also your body language is important. I don't want to be here doing different things around like playing with my hair, my glasses too much, or too many hand motions, right? I want to try to be as positive body language as I possibly can. When we're talking about the lighting, natural lighting is always the best. So if you just happen to have a virtual interview or you're recording your responses to the interview prompt questions, you want to do it as natural lighting as possible. Natural lighting in this case is when we have maybe a window. I'm not in an office right now that has a window, but if I was in an office that had a window, I want that natural light to be facing my face, and I want to make sure I remove the glare as much as possible. And depending on where your laptop is sitting, it could have more of a glare. If I need to use a ring light or anything that just kind of shines more light on my face, that's what we want to do. Your nonverbal cues, as I mentioned, not too many hand motions or playing with your hair, playing with a straw or tumbling a pen around or even tapping sounds. You can hear that, right? So you want to make sure you're doing whatever you can. And guess what? I'm moving my hands right now underneath, but it's not in the light of the camera. You may not be able to see that. It's okay to do a couple of hand gestures if that's your thing. If you do it underneath below the light and the camera, you're okay as well, right? So, Jackie, you have anything to add here too?
Yes. So, um, for students who have maybe disabilities, for example, if it's always good to make sure you're facing the camera. So if you are someone who cannot see, or maybe you can't hear, just make sure you're using the tools that you need so that you can be in the center of facing whatever tool that device that you're using, so that you can also hear the questions clearly and be in the camera frame to where you're not looking or getting distracted or look as if you're being distracted. Also, like the hand gestures or moving, fiddling with your hair and things. If you have a fidget toy or something, keep your hands moving. You can always do that as long as it's not in the camera frame. Because, like Ann said, she was moving her hand. You didn't really see that she was moving, right? So, if you have something that you can use, as long as you are not doing something all outrageous, because like this is distracting for me and I'm doing it myself like that. So think about that when someone is asking you questions. So just be mindful of what you're doing and how you're being presented. Okay.
Perfect.
Do we have any questions?
Okay, I see that we have some chat, but we'll get to those in just a second. So we've gone over the phone screen. We've talked about the video recording interviews and the virtual interviews. Those are interviews that you're not in the direct limelight of a person. The next interview is in person, right? This is the one that you're not able to hide yourself. You have to show up for these interviews. Now, before I even go into this one, Jackie, I remember a tip that we talked about before is let's say that you go through a phone screen or you've been invited to a virtual interview, and if you need some accommodations, is when is
Yes.
a good time to ask for those?
So when you have an interview, if you have a disability and maybe a device is needed or um, anything that you may need for, so for example, an interpreter or a listening device is needed before the interview starts, always ask for that in preparation too. So if you get that random phone call and let's say you don't have anything with you, can you say, "One moment, please? I need to get the tools that I need." And they can wait. And that's always acceptable. Okay. Make sure you have everything that you need ahead of time. And then when you're setting an interview for in person or virtual, you ask at that time, like, well, what is this going to look like for me so that I can be prepared? And then if they have the resources that you need, then that's when you can ask for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I didn't want to go too far into it because before making sure we address that as well. Because now you've passed that first round of interviews, the phone screen. You've been invited in to now showcase who you are in front of either maybe it's one person. It could be a panel interview where you have more than one person. It could be two, three, however many people they decide to invite to interview you. They could do it in all at one point in time as a panel, or it could be an interview where you interview for maybe a few minutes with one person and then you go to the next person's office and interview with them. It's kind of like a round robin type of interview. You still need to be prepared, right? It's whatever that company is asking you to do to show up that day for an in-person interview. Be prepared. Ask those questions ahead of time. If you do need special accommodations, what does that look like for you? And then what if another scenario? So what if you received the phone interview and between that time and they want to schedule for an in-person interview, and between that time, let's say something unexpected happened, and I don't want to put any negative energy in the air, but let's say that you in your travels home one day from the grocery store, someone there's an accident that happened, and now you're not able to physically get to that in-person interview because of that car accident. In that case, you can still call back and make special arrangements, and maybe instead of doing an in-person interview, request a virtual. Is that is that along the lines, Marika and Jackie?
Yes. Yes. Anytime you need anything, anytime something happens, be sure to let the company know that if you did get, you know that you're going to that second interview or that second round, be sure to be prepared ahead of time, because if something happens, then that they would also need to know that so that they can
Absolutely.
also accommodate you for whatever reason. And just like Ann said before, like if you have to go in person, well, let's say you don't know where you're going or you've never been to that place before. Ask them for directions. Ask them where you need to be. Ask if there a ramp. What if you need a wheelchair? What, or if you have a cane or something? Make sure you know all the points in which to get to and from wherever you're going. So you can always ask that ahead of time.
And I want to just add that this top bullet about planning to arrive 10 to 15 minutes early, that is the standard advice in, interview recommendations for able-bodied folks. And so if you know yourself as an individual who is going to need to find accessible parking, get your ramp out of your van, and get yourself into the building and navigate a new environment, then you are going to want to build out extra time for that. If you need to stop to the restroom and take care of a medical need ahead of, an hour or 2 hours of interviewing, adjust accordingly, right? And so that 10 to 15 is like the standard for an able-bodied person. If you need to adapt that, definitely do so.
Absolutely, absolutely. In addition to planning your route for the to get to the interview, let's say that your interview is going to be on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. You want to travel that route maybe Monday morning at 10 a.m. or Tuesday morning to see what that's going to look like too. So drive it a day or two ahead of time just to see if you can gauge the traffic, right? Because a 10 a.m. interview traffic is probably, or even anything leading up to 10 a.m. is going to be a different set of traffic that you might anticipate than you would at maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock. So think about the timing of the day that you're going to be doing your interview and try to at least plan that route ahead of time.
And I see Jennifer's comment here on Google Maps, and I've made this mistake before where I plugged in a destination on Google Maps and it gave me an ETA and it said, yep, that'll be just a 30-minute drive. And then the next morning during traffic, I plugged it in and it said, that'll be 49 minutes. And I was like, oh, that was different than what it said at 7 p.m. last night. Right. And so
Absolutely.
that's what Anne means about being sure that you are planning that route at the correct time of day to adjust for those travel times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So even before the interview, you definitely want to print extra copies of your resume. It's always great to have to bring that with you, right? They have the electronic copy. They may have printed it out, but maybe you added something to your resume since you applied for that position that's important for them to know about you. You have an additional skill or you've accomplished something like maybe between that time now you've completed your education. So I want to give them a updated version of my resume and point to those things that's been added to my resumes to let them know I bring more value. You don't have to say that part, but I bring more value now based on this. Um, Before the interview, you also want to plan your attire, right? Now, it's always best to dress the part of the position that you're going to or you're going for, right? Now, for several years, I was the director of career services at a culinary art school. Those students were encouraged to wear their chef's coat and uniform without the hat to their interviews. And guess what? Employers would tell me, hey, Ann, I knew I was going to hire Jennifer when I saw her walk across the parking lot with her chef's coat and her toolkit. I knew I was going to hire your students based on XYZ because they showed up for the part, right? So understand what it is, the position you're interviewing for, the attire, what they're expecting you to wear to that interview. And even if, word of advice, speaking from experience here, a million years ago, I was invited to an interview and it was going to be on a Friday afternoon. And this particular company, the guy said, "Oh, it's dress down Friday, wear jeans and a t-shirt to an interview." And when I got there, he was like, "Oh, I don't know if I've reminded you that it's dress down Friday. We wear jeans and t-shirts." Well, I don't work for the company yet, right? I did my dress down version of for an interview, which I still felt like underdressed, but I still came in slacks or a skirt and a probably a blouse or some sort. Because again, that's the position I want to leave the lasting impression. He understood when I mentioned that to him as well. I was like, I explained to him, yes, you did remind me. I was like, however, this is my normal, because maybe jeans and t-shirts is not what I normally wear. So I'm going to dress the part that I feel comfortable in. He respected that. So do again, research the what the dress attire is for that organization that you're going to be working, potentially working for, and dress the part. Make sure your clothes are laid out the day before, the night before, and make sure it's you're not just throwing it in the dryer and hoping it's going to get rid of the wrinkles. That doesn't always happen, right? But be prepared. And if you plan ahead, you can be prepared for that. During the interview, you want to greet everyone with confidence. I know it's normal. The common thing is to do handshakes. However, since COVID, and other things, you don't necessarily have to shake their hand. You can acknowledge, you can do a head nod possibly. I've seen where people will come in and they might do the fist pump or they may do the elbow thing or whatever the case is. And if you're unable to even do those things, what are some suggestions, Jackie or Marika?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Okay, so you don't always have to shake like Ann said or fist bump. A nice polite wave in a direction that you feel is more centered, that is always acceptable. Or whenever you are guided to your seat, just saying, "Hello, thank you for having me." Just saying it verbally is could be enough. But then if you're in your seat and you know where everyone is, then just give a wave to everyone or a head nod whenever someone introduces themselves because you can hear in what direction they're coming from. So that is always acceptable.
Yeah, we just wanted to reiterate this point, especially for this population that we're speaking to today, right? Because for a really long time, the guidance on best, interview conduct is a good firm handshake. I remember like in high school and undergrad, people having us practice our handshakes and giving us
Mhm.
feedback. Well, what if you don't have arms? Right? Like people have limb differences. People have my uncle has quadriplegia. He's a wheelchair user. And so he doesn't have the dexterity in his hand for a typical handshake. It's just kind of a limp hand and somebody might grab it. I've seen him offer a hand before, but I've also just seen him greet people, with plenty of confidence and warmth and say, greetings, lovely to be here, lovely to meet you. And there's no handshake involved. And so we're adapting this type of suggestion for the times and for the population. And we want to just let you know that you are enough and you don't need to do all of the typical physical interactions, that there are so many ways that you can still give a greeting with warmth and confidence. Don't get hung up on those pieces. That's ableist requirements. There are more important pieces to focus on in ways that you can shine in these moments.
Absolutely. And those things that both Jackie and Marika just mentioned, it's the bottom two, connecting with the interviewer, right? Being positive and professional. You're still being those, projecting those things and with confidence. So make sure you do those things within your ability. Now, this last section here, closing the interview, we cannot miss this at all, guys. We have to make sure that we're ready for that as well. Because I alluded to this at the beginning that an interview is an exchange, right? It starts with the potential employer asking you questions. Now, guess what? The tables are turned. You get to ask questions. Prepare a few questions. We typically say about 3 to 5 thoughtful questions for the interview. Oftentimes, we say about 3 to 5 because some of those questions may be answered during that process. You want to see if, just as well as they're trying to see if you fit into the culture of that organization, you want to see if this organization fits into what you're expecting and anticipating as well. So, have some questions to ask at the end. Always, always, regardless if it's an in-person interview, if it's been a virtual interview, or a phone screen. Well, phone most of the time, if it's a phone interview, not just the screen, you want to follow up with a within 24 hours with a thank you note, and that can be an email. You don't physically go and buy thank you cards anymore and handwrite those because guess what? Time is of the essence, right? And if the company asks you for any type of request, like they may need a sample of your portfolio or something like that, then make sure you respond with that within an ample time as well, usually within that 24-hour mark as well. Jackie?
Yes, and so with these questions, of course we're gonna have the Q&A after, but just a tip is when you are thinking about your questions, don't automatically go to, um, well, how soon are you hiring? I mean, that is important to know, but have something more to it. Like, well, in this culture, what is the culture of this company? Who works here? Because that's something that you may need to know. Like, are are the people going to be able to vibe with you? Are you going to be able to vibe with them? That is very important when you're looking for a job, because if you don't feel like you fit, well, why would you want to be there, right? So make
Absolutely.
sure that the company can answer that question too for you.
Absolutely. All leading questions, focusing on the next thing. So I want to mention and interject this before I was just monitoring the time. So we want to make sure we get through all of the slides and everything. But if you are an introvert, use that, leverage that, right? Use your introversion as your skill, as a strength of yours. So you want to manage the time of the interview, like when you're invited to come in for an interview or to do the next round of interviews. You want to do it at a time of the day that you feel most energetic, right? You may not be the morning person. So 7, 8 o'clock in the morning may not be your time, but 11 a.m. may be your time, right? Or 12 noon. So leverage that. Think about the time of the day that you're scheduling your interview. Be prepared for small talk. And that's kind of the hard thing, right? Especially if you're more, don't necessarily engage in small talk. Now, I have the gift of gab. I can speak to anyone about anything for the most part. But practice these things, right? Think about what can you talk about? Maybe you can connect with the person and say, "Hey, Marika, I really like your blouse today. That's really nice." Or something that you can identify with the person, right? Just to have small talk. And always, always be confident. We're going to repeat, we've repeated this several times. Be confident with your skills, your strengths, and your abilities. And then again, do the research, research the company, their mission statement, their value proposition, the role that you're going to be playing. Think about potential questions that might be asked of you. Practice until it feels natural. And the big interview, the platform that you can use, we'll talk about that in just a second. But again, lean into your introversion. Be thoughtful and, think about those questions that you may be asking at the end. We talked about leveraging pauses so that you can gather your thoughts and be able to respond in a positive light. Take notes. And usually, if I'm in person, I will make a comment. Is it okay if I can take notes on this part? I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I've never had anyone to tell me no, right? So you do want to acknowledge that because you don't want to make it look like you're doodling or doing something distractive. I'm actively listening, and for me, my active listening skill is by me writing down and taking notes. Afterwards, you definitely want to, give yourself some time to recover, right? Reflect on that experience and just be able to sit in that for a moment. So these are some things that we want you to just take care of yourself. All right. So Unfortunately, I won't be able to show you the big interview today, but let's talk about it. And then what I encourage you guys to do is you can schedule some time with me or any of the career services or anyone in career services, and we can show you what big interview is. In fact, I'm going to invite Satricia to add the big interview link into chat so you guys can see it. You already have access to it. You will activate it with your ACC email address. That link is austincc.biginterview.com. And so with Big Interview, it gives you an opportunity to practice before you go in for the actual interview. They have sample questions there by the industry, by if it's an entry level, if it's a mid level. They have again, these sample questions that you can ask and you can start practicing. The tell me about yourself that Marika, I believe it was Jackie brought it up earlier, is one of the first interview questions that you're asked or something similar to that. You can frame that in a way that is going to be like almost like your elevator pitch. You always want your responses to these interview questions, guys. I didn't mention this before, but this is something that's important. While you're responding to an interview question, there is a length of time that you should not exceed. Your response should be within no less than 30 seconds because we want to show that we're interested, and no longer than 2 minutes for the most part. How we get there is we can use the star story method to keep us within that time frame. As thinking about, these are answers mostly to behavior type of questions, right? Tell me about a time when, or describe a situation when, not a hypothetical one, right? So now we want to set up the scenario or the situation, give them some context around, the background information, context clues. We want to describe the problem or the challenge, the situation, that the situation brought up. Then, as much as possible, we want to use what I did, what were my actions, and then include positive outcomes. Now, we understand that a lot of the outcomes are not always the best results. In this case, I want to turn the star story into a start story. I would add another T, and that would be the takeaway. The takeaway is what we learned, the valuable lesson that we learned from this process was that we are going to plan and allow ourselves ample time to start planning in advance. We're going to have a project manager and have timeline check-ins, whatever it is that you need to do. That's your takeaway. So that changes that star story into a start story. And it gives that employer the opportunity to understand that you bring this skill to us now, right? That to that potential employer, and that you understand the concept of what needs to happen because you left an impressive story, something that you were a part of before. It could be a work story, it could be one based on a school project, it could be one that you've done from a volunteer. Your skills are your skills, your strengths are your strengths, right? Find a way